Hello, and welcome to episode 18 of the Fiber Circus. It's April 3rd, 2019, and thanks a lot for joining me this week. I'm your host, Elizabeth, and I'm coming to you from southern Indiana, where I have a hand-dyeing, spinning, knitting, and farm business known as the Spotted Circus. You can get a hold of me on Facebook, Ravelry, and Instagram as Spotted Circus, and everything that you need to know about from this week's episode will be just down below in the show notes. So, thank you very much for all the returning viewers who decided to come back, and if you're a new viewer, thanks a lot for coming along. Please don't forget to hit subscribe and like, so that way we can get the podcast out to a few more people. We're up to 149 subscribers, so hey, that's great. Of course, only 23 people have viewed the last episode. Not real great retention there, but thanks for the people that are watching. I appreciate it. So, this week, I have a few works in progress. I've cast on another sweater because, cast-on-itis happens. I taught a machine knitting class last weekend, and I'm getting ready for shearing, so the season's definitely ramping up, and I've actually managed to do quite a bit of dyeing in the last couple of days, too. So sit back, relax, get your knitting, and hopefully you enjoy the show. So, first work in progress this week. I am still working, imagine that, on my Suriously Holey by Stephen West. I am currently knitting it out of Alpacaboo, which is my Alpaca Bamboo Merino Nylon base in the Disco Lights colorway, which is this black color here with the neon flecks. And then on my brushed Surrey base, which the colorway I think is called Neon Sprinkles. So, since last week, I was down here, or at least I think I was. I'm pretty sure that I moved the marker here. Pretty sure I moved it. But I've put on a whole nother set of holes. So I'm finally getting ready to almost do the border, which I still am not through my first 400 yards of sock yarn. And I'm making sure to move this week, so that way I definitely know where it is I've gone. So I've got, I think, 6 or 7 more rows from where I'm at right now, and then I'll be doing like a massive increase. I've just gone from, I think, 300 and some odd stitches to over 450. So the rows are taking quite a while. This is on, I want to say, at least a 24, if not 36-inch circular, and it's pretty bunched up on there still. And I'm knitting it on, I think, size 5s. I can check the pattern and actually know. So, let's see what Steven says. I didn't bother to do a gauge swatch for this because this was my first brioche project, and I really didn't figure that in a shawl gauge mattered as long as it actually fits. So, this finished size is supposed to be 78 inches wide by 26 inches deep. And it says that I'm using a US 5. So, yep, US 5. So I'm still cruising along on it. This is my second ball of the brushed alpaca, and what I have left of my Pacaboo is this. So that's out of 400 yards, so I'm gonna at least hit into the second ball somewhat soon on that. So it's going pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it. My brioching is getting pretty good, because when it's just brioche, you kind of have to get good. So this is kind of an up close of the front side. So on this side, the black yarn is brioche knitting, and the white in between is brioche purling, which is why it's fading into the background. Whereas on the reverse, the white is brioche purling and the black is brioche, or no, the white is brioche knitting, the black is brioche purling. And I totally have a mistake right there. You can see where at some point I've passed a yarn over on the wrong side when I was doing it. And I have actually learned how to fix that, because on the hat that I was working on, I made a mistake and it looked really obvious. So I'll probably go back and fix that. I also had somehow managed on one of these edges, this edge, to pick up a couple of extra stitches at some point in here. So I dropped back down to try to decrease it, but now I have this wonky loop, which isn't exactly going to block out real well. But I'm hoping it will kind of disguise itself in there. In theory, I wanted this as a shop sample by, when is the fiber event? In like 3 weeks? It's not going to get done. I know it's not going to get done. So what I may do is just attach the ends together and hang it up as a display piece instead. So I'm still working on it, but the rows, since they've gotten so much larger and its brioche is taking forever right now. Luckily, it's still fitting in my Star Knits squid bag. Gotta love a good size bag. So I'm working on that project. I'm also still working on my Dangerfield Island by Tanis Gray. And this is a sweater that I'm knitting. I have a deadline for this one also, which is the end of April is when I've got to finish it by in order to get all my points for the Super Summer Knit Together teacher knit along. So I've got to really kick into gear on that. I am using Paintbox chunky yarns, Simply Chunky, and this is an acrylic. It's 100% acrylic. I wanted to be able to knit a chunky weight sweater quickly and for somewhat cheap. So last week I was, let's see, where's my magic marker? There it is. So clear down there, and you can see I've gone quite a ways here. So I have roughly 16 more rows to go, and then I should be done with the body. And as you can see, it's a reverse stockinette, and here's the center cable pattern. And then each side also has cables running up it. So 16 more rows, and then hopefully I will be to the point where I can bind off the base, and then I just have sleeves to do. I haven't really kept track of how my yarn usage is going. I probably should have, just to make sure that I have enough. But I've seen a few more balls floating around that my kitten hasn't stolen and taken under the bed. So I think that they're still there. And I have been marking where all the buttons go. There's going to be 8 buttons on this. So that'll be the next big question of what buttons are we going to use. So making pretty good progress, I think. That being said, I need to make more progress because I need to commit and just finish this, because what's the point of knitting it if you don't get points for it? So I'm cruising along on that, and those are being knit on size 10 needles. And if you're European, that's a 6, no, these are size 10.5, on which are 6.5 millimeter needles. And these are the Zing interchangeables. They're a metal needle. They got a nice tip. They're not splitting the yarn at all, and they're staying pretty well screwed to my interchangeable cords, which I like. And that is all living in a big, huge bag from Bags by Awesome Granny, which you've seen on pretty much every podcast I've recorded, because I keep switching projects into it, because it's such a nice large size. And the bag's holding up really well. It's got some cat hair and debris on the bottom, but I take this quite a few places, and it's pretty clean. It's holding up. I haven't seen any stitches that have popped on it or anything. It's got a really great handle, so it's going along smooth. My third thing on the needle, because you know you can't just have 1 or 2 projects, is living in a Halloween fat squirrel bag, because it was convenient at the time and I do like Halloween. And this is the vintage Prim by Andrea Mowry. So since we last met, I was where this little purple pom-pom is. So I haven't made a ton of progress. I've made maybe an inch. But it's been just enough to get this brioche section. I'm trying to make sure I don't drop it off the needles here. This brioche cable-y thing done. So the black color is from Dye Candy Yarns, and it's in her Dark Magic colorway. And then the pink is from BAAH Yarns, and it is called Sealed with a Kiss. So it's 100% superwash merino on their La Jolla base. And then the Dye Candy is a 75-25 merino nylon. So both of these are going to be knit all because of this pom-pom. And this pom-pom is just awesome. I have discovered that it's raccoon fur, which is kind of interesting. I wouldn't have guessed a raccoon when I looked at this per se. So it's going to end up on top of this hat. It's going to be slightly wild and crazy. I'm not so keen on the non-cabled section. It's just plain garter stitch. And to me, you know, I go from this fun dark cable to that. It's a little louder, I guess, than what I expected. I think I almost would have preferred that it just maintained in brioche rib, like down here at the bottom. But that's the way it goes. You know, that's the way the pattern's written. So I'm going to go ahead and move this little marker up so that way I remember. Come on, little guy. You know, these little tiny markers are great because they're small and not in the way. But at the same time, the little doohickey that attaches it is also very, very small, which makes it kind of hard to do. So this is being knit on a US size 3, which is a 3.25 millimeter, and these are fixed circulars, and these are zings also. And it's going along well. I mean, this is a new idea, doing the increases and decreases, and it's good that I'm doing them now because I'm going to run into them in my Suriously Holey later on. So the project's going well. I haven't worked on it near as much because I do have to think somewhat with the increases and decreases, whereas my Suriously Holey is pretty autopilot right now. I'm just repeating 2 rows back and forth multiple times. So I'm working on that also. So 2 brioches and a bulky sweater is what I currently had in progress. But then I decided I needed to cast on something else. And I don't really know why I decided I needed another sweater on the needles. But every now and then, you know, you get that bug. And I'd had the charcoal rainbow mini sets that I'd purchased from In the Deep UC that were just kind of staring at me. And I knew I wanted to make something with it. And originally when I got them, I'd considered a shawl. But then I started to look at some sweaters instead. And it came down to Rainbow in the Storm by Paige Parkin and Marled Mania or Marled Magic by Stephen West. And I contemplated both of them. And the one thing that was holding me back from Rainbow in the Storm is that it's a ribbed sweater. And the entire thing is ribbed. And I know that's going to take quite a while. But then looking at the Marled Mania sweater, it had a solid top and then color in the bottom. And I know I could have changed that, but it would have looked kind of strange, I thought. So I decided to cast on for the Rainbow in the Storm. And what I needed was a background color that would kind of blend in with my rainbow minis that I was going to use. So here are the minis. I've wound them all up into balls. And there's 10 different colors. And I think I'm going to be starting with this, with purple. And I'm going to go purple to blue to green to yellow to orange to red, with this pink being at the very top of my head. So those are the minis I'm going to be knitting with. So I looked around at different types of subtle but bright background colors, and I couldn't really find anything that I exactly wanted. So I had a little bit of yarn sitting around that I was supposed to be dyeing up for my shop, and I confiscated it for my purposes. So this is the yarn that I dyed up. And it's basically, there's a rainbow. It was originally a light gray with a rainbow that I then inserted these rainbow colors, and then I inserted some black and gray over the top of them to kind of mute it down a little bit. So I dyed up plenty of that for my sweater. I should have a few extra skeins, but I'm not going to bother selling them until I 100% know that I'm going to have extra skeins. Because I tried to cast on last night, and I thought that I was casting on the right size, and I'd gotten my 250 some odd stitches on there, knit a whole round, and then I got to actually thinking about the bust measurement, and I realized I'd gone with my bra band size measurement and not actual bust measurement, which there's a few inches of difference there. So then this morning I ripped all that out, and I decided, you know, just to be safe, maybe you should actually swatch for this, because you're going to probably be making the larger size that is on there. So this sweater is knit with 2 fingering weight yarns held together, and it's written to be done on a size 10. So this is my swatch of my yarn being held together. And it's kind of see-through-y on a size 10. And it's supposed to be stretchy, The sweater is also supposed to have 6 or 7 inches of positive ease in it. So I don't know how I feel about this. I mean, if it truly stretches to fit my bust, that's really see-through. I don't really like that. So I'm swatching now on a size 9. And I've just started doing the 9. So we'll see how that goes. So the ribbing and the sleeves and the neckband are all done with just the 2 strands held together, which I really like how this is looking. You know, it doesn't look any different really on the other side because it's just 1 by 1 ribbing. But when I get into the actual body of the sweater, I'll be dropping one of the background colors and putting in one of these minis with it. So this is going to be interesting to see how this goes. It's an entire sweater in ribbing, and I'm starting to think that maybe I need to learn how to do continental style knitting, because I have a feeling that knit one, purl one may be faster going that way. But I'm not real confident in my continental skills either. I haven't really figured out how to purl. I can knit if I have to, but I haven't figured out the purling aspect. So we'll see how it goes. I'm also not planning on alternating skeins, because all of these skeins were dyed in the same dye bath. You know, there's some variation in between the black and the gray and the color placement. But since I'm marling it with a secondary color, I don't know that I really need to worry about about alternating skeins. I hope that doesn't come back to bite me, but I'm not planning on doing it. So we'll see. So yeah, I'm trying to do my swatch right now. These are on carbons. I have an interchangeable carbon set that I picked up for a pretty good deal. And I actually really kind of like the carbons needles. I haven't had a major problem with them coming unscrewed, but I do also screw them in pretty tight when I start the project. So I'm working on that when I should be finishing other things. You know how that goes. Cast-on-itis is a real disease. And another reason why I cast on is because I got a new bag. And if you have a new project bag, you need to put a project into it. Long term, this bag won't work because it's not going to be big enough. But I got these really cute knitting llamas. And you can see they have little bitty ear fluffs, and they're wearing scarves, and the one's knitting the other one a scarf at the same time. And there's little yarn balls all over. And I saw this bag, and I just thought it was the cutest thing I'd seen in a while. And it comes from a Canadian manufacturer. And the tag's kind of hard to see, but it's on there. And it's from Ginger Snap That. And she's out of Canada. And you can kind of see it says Ginger Snap That. And it's got a nice little hangy thing for some stitch markers. It has a cute little bitty llama progress keeper on it. And a nice long handle. And I think this is my second or third bag from her, and I like them. They're really sturdily made. The inside is this kind of bright cloudy fabric, which does match it pretty well, and it's got a white zipper. Long term, it's probably going to get somewhat dirty because of how light blue it is, but you know, new project bag means you should really start another project. I really like this little old lady looking alpaca llama that's knitting right there. Very cute. So that is my newest cast on. Finished objects. I don't have any that I can remember off the top of my head. I haven't done any spinning. Machine knitting, I haven't really done any personally, but I did have a machine knitting class last weekend at Blooming Labs, and it went pretty good. I had one machine that was being a jerk, and it's got something going on with the timing belt, which makes it pretty frustrating. And I sat and attempted to cast on one of my machines, and I tried casting on probably 8 times, and it just wasn't working right. And come to figure out, I hadn't taken off the function that made it slip in both directions instead of just knitting plain. Really simple error that was really stupid. And it just goes to show it doesn't matter how long you've been knitting on one of those machines. You can still make really stupid mistakes. Once I switched it over to the word plain, it cast on with no problems at all. But it was driving me up the wall. And it also probably explains why it is that the lace carriage wasn't working on it too. So, lesson learned, check your buttons 100 times. So it was a great class. Everybody made a cowl in the long run, or a headband. We had one person make a headband. So it went pretty good. That's my last machine knitting class till end of June. So until then, I'm working on just stuff for myself. I did get my pass-up up and running, which is a completely different style of a machine, and I'll try to stick a video in here of it. And basically a pass-up has a double bed at all times together like this, so it's great for knitting socks. It's also great for doing a double fabric where there's a pattern on one side and plain on the other. And now that I think about it, I did have a finished object. I made a sock on that machine. It technically fit my foot, but I had a lot of little errors where the yarn was making loops on one side and dropping off a stitch every now and then. And I'm pretty sure I know what I was doing wrong. It's getting used to a new machine, you know, and figuring out what its quirks are. So, but I technically knit a sock. And I'll try to put the picture of the sock up here. It fits my foot. That's half the battle. I didn't get that on my brother machine so far. So I just need to get some more time and sit down and actually work on it. And then I think I can probably whip out a few test pairs of socks, which I could then put up in my booth. So that way I have examples of what the colorway looks like knit up. So that's the majority of my machine knitting. I have been working quite a bit on getting stuff dyed for the fiber event that's in late April here. And this week was all about dyeing the brushed Surrey alpaca silk, which is what it is that I'm using in my Suriously Holey pattern. There's also quite a few sweaters that are out right now that have you hold a brushed mohair along with a fingering weight yarn. And the brushed alpaca is a nice alternative to the people who are allergic to mohair. I think it feels even softer personally. So I've dyed quite a few colors, and I will give you a preview of them. They will be available in my booth at the Fiber event in Greencastle at the end of the month, and then the next weekend I will be at the Mid-Atlantic MAPACA. Mid-Atlantic Pennsylvania Alpaca. I don't know. It's in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania for 3 days, and it's a giant alpaca show where I'm going to be doing demonstrations and have a full booth. So it'll be up there, and then after that it'll go on to Etsy. So this is 74% baby Surrey alpaca and 26% mulberry silk, and for 50 grams you get 328 yards. So this is Neon Sprinkles, and it's very, very similar to what it is that I'm doing my Suriously Holey with. So you can see, it's a nice fuzzy, bright sprinkly yarn. I then have this colorway, which is kind of a neon, and it's a neon rainbow. There's green, blue, purple, pink, yellow, and orange in there. They seem to be stronger on the yellow and orange than the blue and pink aspect. For some reason, it kind of reminds me of Sesame Street too. And I reskeined these, which I'm kicking myself now for having done that because I think that they looked nicer non-reskeined. But unfortunately, I don't have a good way to go back to the size that they wore because it wasn't a standard size. So this is one of the colors. Then I also have the colorway Steampunk, which is a gray, brown, dark charcoal, and gold kind of color. I have Rhubarb, which is a nice pinky green with some hints of brown in it. I have Frost, which is a blue, aqua, and purple with a little bit of gray and black in there, speckly. I have Shadow, which is a gray with a few hints of brown in there. Kind of a tonal though. I have a new colorway, which is called Wine About It. And it's a super dark burgundy tonal with some pink undertones. Then I have Grape Ape, which is a color I have on some of my other bases, and it's kind of a purpley, plummy, bluey tonal purple. And then the color of Money, which is a deep teal color with some spots that are bright blue. So those are the main colorways that I have dyed up, and I should have, I think I dyed 6 skeins of each. I think I dyed a total of 40 or 50 skeins of that. So that'll be up in the 2 vending events that I have coming up, and then after that they will be up in the shop. And I will be able to do custom orders on it because it's a base I can get pretty readily. I also did 1 thing of roving using some leftover dyes, and then I have 1 self-striping that I just haven't reskeined yet. And it's kind of a corally red with gray, an aqua blue, and then black. And I think I'm going to call it Fire and Ice. And it's a pretty simple repeating self-striping. So I've been working on that. Excuse me. So travels. Are you ready for the travel pile? Because here it comes. So this weekend, we're praying that it doesn't rain. It's supposed to rain tomorrow, which is Thursday. There's like a 50% chance. And after that, 2 days without rain. So I'm hoping to shear all of my alpacas on Saturday the 6th. We'll see how that goes. If it's just me and my husband, we're picking up every single alpaca, putting them on the mats, getting their legs into the restraints, then I'm doing the shearing and collecting the fiber at the same time somehow. And it's a heck of a workout for muscles that you only use about once a year. I'm not normally the kind of person that kneels on my knees and sits, you know, like a little kid used to sit. But when I shear, I kneel on my knees and raise up and down with my thighs a lot. And at almost exactly 24 hours, my rear end starts protesting because it's muscles that I don't normally use throughout the year. And they start screaming at me going, "Why are you doing this to us? This is horrible." So I'm trying to get as many done as humanly possible in the first day. I'm hoping to get all 14 alpacas done. That would be awesome. And then do the 2 llamas the next day in a shoot. We'll see how that goes. Some are much better behaved than others. Unfortunately, Silver Fire's our worst one. He's a male, and when he gets into the shearing restraints, he starts screaming, spitting, and he'll pee. I don't know why he's such a drama queen, but he's the worst one to shear, so he's always last, and I kind of dread doing him, but it has to be done. So that's this weekend, April 13th, so the weekend after, I'm going to be helping out with shearing over at Eagle Bend Alpacas in Kentucky. And Linda has a nice yarn shop over there called, I think, Eagle Bend Fiber and Yarn Shop, maybe. But she raises alpacas and also has a pretty good sized Cormo flock of sheep. So I go there and I help out with her shearing to do the sorting and micron evaluation of her herd. After that, the 19th and 20th is the Fiber event in Greencastle, Indiana. It's one of the first Fiber festivals in the area, so I will have a booth there someplace. Don't really know where yet, but I'll have all sorts of stuff. Of course, all my yarns, fibers, drum carters, spinning wheels, possibly some fleeces if people are interested. So come by and check it out. The weekend after, the 26th through the 28th, is the MAPACA Alpaca Show up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Then, May 13th through the 20th, I'm going to be assisting at a shearing out in Colorado that I work at. A little over 450 to 500 head of alpacas out there that I help with sorting. So, we'll be doing approximately 100 alpacas a day, shearing-wise. And it's always quite an interesting event, managing fleece like that on a commercial level. Then, June 7th through the 9th is the Estes Park Wool Market out in Estes Park, Colorado. I am teaching a class there that Friday morning, I think. Maybe it's afternoon. At some point there, I am teaching a class on corespinning. And it's going to be all about doing art yarn spinning like corespinning and how to make a truly balanced yarn. So it'll be a lot of fun. Hopefully everybody would like to sign up for it. After that, I have June 22nd and 23rd is the Fibery Fun class down at Rolling Oaks Alpaca Ranch in Makanda, Illinois. And we're going to go through selecting alpaca fleeces for processing, what you can process and what really needs to go out to a mill, and then washing, dyeing, carding, blending. What else are we going to cover? Different types of fiber for blending, and probably dyeing some yarn and roving as well. Maybe Firestar or Bamboo. I can't remember exactly which ones it is that we're going to do down there. So it's a really good weekend. It almost always sells out. So highly suggest if you haven't ever worked with fleece It's a great introduction to fleece. Then after that, the 29th and 30th is my machine knitting class. Ooh, excuse me. Down at River Hill Ranch, which is down in Richmond, Kentucky, with Alvina, who has a great Surrey and Wakaya program down there where she truly does the alpacas as a livestock business, and truly uses them for fiber production and other purposes. So it's going to be a fun class. Then we get into July, and July 17th through the 21st, I'll be at the Super Summer Knit Together, hosted by the Knit Girls down in Nashville, Tennessee. And that Sunday, which would be the 21st, I'm also going to be at the Natural Fiber Extravaganza, which is also in Nashville, being put on by the Alpaca Owners Association. There's going to be great vendors there. I'm going to be doing a class on corespinning and a class on overdying natural colors of alpaca and what different colors will give you on different bases. So, great classes there. There's a vendor's market. There's going to be a neat display of different types of fleeces. So definitely if you come into town for SSK where there's just a market on Saturday that the public's allowed in at, you can also go to the Natural Fiber Extravaganza and take some classes there. So check out both the websites. Great way to go to two events kind of in the same area. And then, so let's see, that's July. August. I think August and September are somewhat open so far. I'm sure that's going to change, but so far they're open. And then in October I have SAF, which is the Southeastern Animal Fiber Festival in Asheville, North Carolina, which I go to every year and vend at. So that's the majority of my upcoming events. It's a lot. I have this coming weekend and one weekend in May open, during which I can shear, which is why I really am hoping it doesn't rain. So it's going to be a busy next couple of months. And during all that, I really need to update my Etsy shop at some point. And then I also am having issues with my product trailer that I tow around. And evidently you have to have them resealed every few years, especially if they stay outside. Nobody ever told me this, and it was not in the instruction manuals that I got with the trailer, but the roof has started leaking. And it leaked right onto some stuff, which isn't cool. So I need to get my trailer up when it's unloaded at some point and have them reseal it. And hopefully that's the only thing that's wrong with it. So we've got that to deal with. This week we did shear Bruce and Ted. I had a guy come out and do it for me because shearing sheep and goats is completely different than alpaca shearing. And as he so politely put it, they'd have a really good hanger weight if we decided to eat both of them, which kind of translates to they're gigantic and slightly fat. So we sheared them though. Ted sheared his usual 10 pounds of fleece. His staple length this year was roughly about 6 inches, so he's still doing all right for a 5 or 6 year old sheep. He's definitely big though. He's well over 250 pounds. The sheep guy was pretty impressed with his massive size. And then our goat Bruce, who's a Pygora, sheared, I think it was 5 or 6 pounds if I remember right. And he has about a 5.5 inch long staple on him. So I've skirted them both. I may have them up raw for sale, or I may start dyeing them. I tend to dye Ted's more often because I like dyeing the Teeswater. We're dealing with a little bit of foot issues with Bruce, unfortunately, because it's been so wet and so muddy. His feet have gotten overgrown and they've trapped junk basically in the hooves. So he's on a manicure rotation now. We've got him out in his own little special pen where it's super dry. And we're going to be scrubbing down his feet twice a week, spraying them down with some disinfectant twice a week, and then continuing to trim them until they get back into better shape. So Bruce had better start liking getting a manicure because the first time wasn't very fun. So we'll see how that goes. So next podcast, I'm hoping to have a lot of pictures of shearing. I'm wanting to do before and after photos of all the animals, so that way you can really see just how much they lose. And I'm hoping to try to do some fleece shots on them as well. It's going to just depend on if we get volunteers or not. Because if I don't have to lift them and put them down on the ground, it's going to save my back a ton. And I'll be in a much better mood for shearing. And you don't want a grumpy shear. So, that's about it for this week. No big farm updates from outside simply because I'm kind of in a hurry getting ready for some stuff. And I'm going to go file my taxes tomorrow, and that's always a joy, as everybody knows. So if anybody out there uses QuickBooks and has a farm, and you're willing to share what kind of categories you put things into, definitely let me know, because I'm going to try to do QuickBooks, but I'm very confused as to the categories of things, because it's not really tailored towards what I do. And there really isn't a very good reference for how to use QuickBooks that I've found so far. So, trying to do better this year on my taxes. It's only April that I've decided this. So technically I've only got 4 months to catch up on if I can get caught up. So otherwise, that's about it for this week, and I'll plan on seeing you guys in 2 weeks. Thanks a lot. Bye.